boardroom reeked of tension as billionaire Richard Langston slammed the contract folder shut. His empire, built on cutting-edge technology and flawless business instincts, had just taken a devastating hit. A multinational partner pulled out of a $1 million deal at the last minute, citing Richard's failure to innovate. His executives sat stiffly around the long glass table, too afraid to speak, while Richard's rage echoed off the walls. "Do you all realize what this means?" he roared. "A year of negotiations gone!" The weight of failure pressed down on him like never before. But in that very building, sweeping the floors outside the gleaming office, was a janitor whose quiet daughter would soon change Richard's world in ways he couldn't yet imagine. Down the hall, 14-year-old Maya sat on a bench swinging her legs as she waited for her father to finish his shift. She had been coming there for years, sketching in her notebook while her dad polished floors and emptied trash bins in the tower where billion-dollar deals were signed. Most employees barely noticed her. To them she was invisible, just like her father. But Maya wasn't just doodling. Her notebook brimmed with diagrams, patterns, and designs far too advanced for a teenager. She had a secret she kept close to her heart, something her father always told her was too big for their world. That evening, Richard stormed out of the boardroom, loosening his tie in frustration. His eyes landed on the janitor mopping near the lobby, and beside him, the quiet girl scribbling furiously. Normally, Richard wouldn't have spared them a second glance, but tonight desperation gnawed at him. "What's she always writing?" he asked sharply. The janitor froze, unsure how to answer. Maya looked up timidly, clutching her notebook to her chest. "Just ideas," she murmured. Richard raised a skeptical brow. "Ideas? What kind of ideas could a janitor's kid possibly have that my team of experts doesn't?" Maya hesitated, her heart pounding, then flipped open the notebook. Pages spilled with hand-drawn blueprints, eco-friendly energy grids, designs for self-sustaining buildings, even a prototype for a new type of solar panel. Richard snatched the book, ready to scoff, but as his eyes scanned the pages, his breath caught. The diagrams were precise, the equations flawless. This wasn't a child's fantasy. It was innovation, raw and unpolished, but bursting with potential. "Who taught you this?" he demanded. Maya swallowed nervously. "No one. I just see things differently. I figure out patterns." For the first time in weeks, Richard felt a flicker of hope. He called his chief engineer into the lobby, thrusting the notebook into his hands. The man's eyes widened as he flipped through the pages. "Sir, these concepts, if developed, could revolutionize our energy division." Richard looked back at Maya in disbelief. "You did this?" She nodded shyly. "I wanted to help my dad. He says you lost a contract. Maybe this could fix it." The janitor stared at his daughter, tears in his eyes. He had always known she was special, but to see her genius recognized by the man at the top was almost too much to take in. Within days, Richard's office buzzed with a new kind of energy. His team pored over Maya's sketches, testing, refining, and realizing that her designs offered exactly the innovation the lost partner had demanded. Richard made calls, his voice steadier now, offering to reopen negotiations. "We have something new," he promised. "Something you'll want to see." Behind him, Maya peeked nervously, her father's hand resting proudly on her shoulder. For the first time, she wasn't invisible. She was the key. When the foreign investors returned, Richard presented the polished prototype based on Maya's work. The executives leaned in, skeptical at first, but their eyes widened as the model demonstrated efficiency levels far beyond anything on the market. "This," Richard said, his voice calm and confident, "will redefine energy in urban centers." The room erupted with interest. Contracts were redrafted, pens scratched signatures, and the $1 million deal not only returned but doubled in value. Richard sat back, relief flooding his chest. And at the edge of the room, Maya smiled softly, knowing she had changed the fate of an empire with nothing more than her notebook. Later that evening, when the offices had emptied, Richard found himself walking into the janitor's closet, a place he'd never stepped foot in before. There sat Maya and her father quietly eating sandwiches. Richard cleared his throat awkwardly. "I owe you more than a contract," he said, his voice uncharacteristically humble. "Maya, you don't belong in the shadows. You belong in a lab, in a university, anywhere your mind can grow." Her father looked at him warily, protective as always, but Richard's eyes carried no mockery now. Only respect. Richard personally arranged for Maya to receive scholarships, mentors, and a future her father had never dared to dream of. Yet Maya never forgot where she came from. Every evening, she still sat with her father while he worked, her notebook growing thicker with ideas. And every time Richard passed them, he nodded. A silent reminder that genius can come from anywhere, even the daughter of a janitor in the halls of a billionaire's empire. In the end, Richard realized something he had never admitted before. Wealth could buy contracts, companies, and influence, but it could not buy vision. That spark came from the unlikeliest of places. And for him, it came from a young girl with a battered notebook who turned his greatest loss into a triumph. He had once thought of her as invisible, but now she was unforgettable. The story of Maya's breakthrough spread faster than Richard expected. At first, it was whispered among business circles. An anonymous young mind had saved Langston Enterprises from collapse. But when one of the engineers let slip that the mine belonged to a janitor's daughter, the press pounced. Headlines screamed about the child genius from the shadows, and soon reporters crowded the gates of the skyscraper. Angela, Maya's father, shielded her fiercely, but the world wasn't willing to let go. "Is it true your design saved a billion-dollar company?" one journalist shouted as cameras flashed. Maya ducked behind her father, clutching her notebook, overwhelmed by attention she had never asked for. Richard watched from his office window as the frenzy unfolded, torn between pride and guilt. He had wanted Maya to shine, but now he worried the spotlight might burn her. He called her father in for a private meeting. "I can protect her from the media, give her security, tutors, whatever she needs," Richard promised. The janitor folded his arms, his face hard. "She doesn't need to be paraded like some trophy. She just needs a chance to learn in peace." Richard nodded slowly, realizing that for all his money, he still didn't fully understand what it meant to nurture a gift. Meanwhile, rival companies took notice. One energy tycoon offered millions to lure Maya away, sending expensive gifts to the janitor's modest apartment. Another whispered that Langston was exploiting her brilliance for profit. Angela grew anxious, fearing the world would try to steal his daughter's future. But Maya, wise beyond her years, looked at her father and said, "I don't want their money. I just want my ideas to help people." Her words struck both men differently, Angela with pride, Richard with a sharp pang of shame. He realized Maya's vision was bigger than contracts. It was about impact, something he had long forgotten in his pursuit of wealth. Tensions boiled over when a rival CEO confronted Richard publicly at a business summit. "You're hiding behind a child's brain," the man sneered. "Without her, your empire is finished." Gasps rippled through the hall. Richard's instinct was to snap back with arrogance, but instead he stood tall and said, "You're right. Without her, we'd be finished. But brilliance has no pedigree, no title. She may be a janitor's daughter, but she's also the future, and I'd rather stand beside her than cling to a fortune built on pride." The audience erupted in applause, silencing the rival and cementing Maya's place as more than a rumor. She was a force. That night, back in the quiet of the janitor's closet, Maya worked on a new sketch, her pencil racing across the paper. Richard peeked in, humbled by the sight. "What is it this time?" he asked softly. Maya looked up with a shy smile. "A city that powers itself. No waste, no pollution." Richard felt a lump rise in his throat. For years he had measured success in contracts and numbers. But in this small girl, with her fearless imagination, he saw a future far richer than money could buy. And as Angela placed a protective arm around his daughter, Richard silently vowed that no rival, no greed, no storm would ever dim the light of the janitor's daughter who had saved him.